Welcome back to Quick Bits. Today we are talking about the week of April 29th to May 3rd. So I hope you had a good May the 4th and May the 5th and Revenge of the Sith. Yes, I'm a Star Wars nerd. It's also like birthday month for me and Dr. B, so that's delightful. But we have been in trial gavel to gavel for the Commonwealth versus Karen Read. I also covered the settlement in the Britney Spears conservatorship, and Harvey Weinstein is getting a retrial. We need to chat. Let's get into it. I'm legal analyst Emily D. Baker. This is the Quick Bits, where I break down just the main points of the pop culture and entertainment cases I'm currently covering on YouTube and the Emily Show podcast. Let's get into it. First, on this week's podcast, I covered the settlement in the Britney Spears conservatorship. The conservatorship is completely done. The bond that covered James Spears as the conservator has been exonerated or released. And the only thing really outstanding is whether or not Sam Ingham will get paid the legal fees he had made a motion for, and that should be resolved pretty shortly. The settlement of the outstanding expenses against the estate is sealed and is private, so we will not know the details of that settlement, but we did learn that no further accountings were done after the 12th accounting, and all of the 12th accounting objections were released and the 12th accounting was admitted as it stands. The money's already paid to James Spears' attorneys stand. The motions for more legal fees for James Spears' attorneys were denied as moot. And Britney made some statements on Instagram indicating that she felt like there was no justice and is not pleased with her family, but that is all in the Emily Show podcast from last week. I also updated in the Lawnerd app that Harvey Weinstein is getting a retrial, and that's expected to take place sometime in September. It's unknown if that will be televised or streamed in any way or not. It's early days to tell, but the judge did tell the attorneys they are expecting a after Labor Day date for the New York retrial of Harvey Weinstein after the Court of Appeals overturned his prior conviction. Let's talk about the Karen Read trial. A huge thank you to today's sponsor, Green Chef. Green Chef is the #1 meal kit for eating well. And at the Baker household, it's the only meal kit for actually getting dinner on the table because it takes out all the parts of dinner that are difficult for me, including the planning, the grocery shopping, and the deciding what to eat. Green Chef is delivered right to your door with fresh and organic ingredients, and you can choose from over 80 different menu items each week. And you can pick meals that fit your lifestyle, from vegan and vegetarian to protein-packed or paleo, keto, or just balanced lifestyle. Pick what works for you. Plus, meals are ready in just about 30 minutes. So if you're ready to try Green Chef for yourself, head to greenchef.com/EmilyBaker50 and use code EmilyBaker50 to get 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. That's 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months when you go to greenchef.com/EmilyBaker50 and use code EmilyBaker50. Let's get back to today's Quick Bits. If you enjoy live trial coverage, again, you have made my channel the #1 place to watch live trial coverage with like 20,000 of your closest law nerd friends in the chat. I went into this trial with just the briefest overview background that I did in the podcast because I wanted to understand this as it came into the jury. And am I regretting that decision? Some. A little bit, and I'll tell you why. Because I was really hoping that opening statements would give me a clear outline of the case from both sides. Generally, what I like to see, expect to see, and did in my own opening statements is you paint a picture for the jury, or you show them the picture on the box of a puzzle. And you need to tell them, look, evidence comes in puzzle pieces. But if you can see the picture on the box, it's easier to build the puzzle. What I felt like happened is that the defense attorneys held up the picture on the box and started showing the jurors some of the individual pieces that form the outline of that puzzle and really tied that together. I feel like the prosecution took a bunch of puzzle pieces that are all the exact same color and hurled them into the jury box, figuratively, of course, and said, there's pieces. They gave a lot of detail. There will be DNA. There's a broken glass. There were fragments on the victim's clothing, on and on and on. but didn't give us an overall outline of why did this happen? How did this happen? How much damage was there to the car that Karen Read supposedly hit Officer John O'Keefe with? Where was the victim found? How does that connect to how the mechanism of death happened? There wasn't a ton of a clear, overarching picture of the case, and the prosecutor is unfortunately monotone, making it hard to follow what's important and what is more minute detail. And then the defense attorney, Yannetti, got up and said in his very first line in opening statements, Karen Read was framed. And I could see in the chat that everyone was like, wait, what now? And I imagine the jury also perked up after 45 minutes of the prosecution's opening that was difficult to follow. So the defense theory of the case at this point, a week in, is still much clearer to me based on those opening statements. If you are following this case or only have time to follow parts of it, I have daily breakdowns on the Quick Bits channel. So you can go and see day 1, day 2, day 3 as they happen. So those are summaries from the day of trial that we clip out from the live streams and put on Quick Bits so you can just get to those parts. And we maybe lean in a little bit to the moments where my cousin Vinny comes into court because now it's happening. After the defense opening statement, the prosecution called 2 civilian witnesses, the victim's brother and sister-in-law, to talk about not just the victim, but ring footage of Karen Read coming and going from the victim's house and statements and conversations about the relationship between Karen Read and victim John O'Keefe, including a fight they had in Aruba about whether or not John O'Keefe was cheating on Karen Read, and her conversations with the victim's sister-in-law about that. Then we got into the very first officers on scene, and then the rest of the week was fire and paramedic personnel that arrived on scene. And we have gotten through everyone on every engine and in every ambulance that arrived at this scene and what they saw and what they heard. But it's not clear exactly what the victim was wearing because there has been conflicting testimony. It's not clear exactly what the defendant said to EMS personnel because there's been conflicting testimony. In their opening statement, the prosecution said EMS heard Karen Read say, I hit him, period. The prosecution didn't say period, but their inflection did. And what we've gotten through testimony is some EMS saying they heard Karen Read say, I hit him, while she was distraught. Some, the person who elicited the answer to the question, saying that she asked Karen Read what happened, and Karen Read looked at another woman that was with her and said, I hit him. But it sounded from the testimony like it was more of a question to that individual. But there was another EMS who said that Karen Read responded that way in an answer to their question. So there is a bit of confusion about who said what to whom and in what context. And then at the very end of the day on Friday, we had a paramedic individual that was taking Karen Read to the hospital. And she said, could I have hit him? To that individual after asking, is he dead? Is he dead? And talking to paramedics about the children, John O'Keefe's niece and nephew, who he took custody of after his sister and brother-in-law both passed. What has stuck out to me in this first week of trial is that so far we've not seen anyone treat the location where the victim was found, which is the home of another police officer, as a crime scene. And we heard that at some point somebody had a leaf blower and was blowing snow around. But what's not clear is where that leaf blower was blowing snow vis-a-vis where the prosecution says pieces of Karen Read's taillight were found. Also, the discrepancy about what the victim is wearing is going to become more stark because on Friday, we saw photos of the victim's injuries to his arm, which have been called furrows or scratches to the arm and are fairly deep lacerations. We haven't had expert testimony about those injuries, just the on-scene paramedics, but we've also heard testimony that the clothing that the victim was wearing was not altered or harmed or ripped in any way. And so if the prosecution says that microscopic pieces of taillight were found in the victim's clothing, then where did the scratches come from? And did they happen at the same time as the injury that led to death? There really are a lot more questions than answers at this point in the Karen Read trial. And we are 1 week into essentially 8 weeks of trial. There was also a moment midway through with one of the Boston firefighter paramedics where he was talking about the scratches on the victim's arm and said that they were furrows, but said it with a glorious Boston accent. And defense attorney Alan Jackson, who's from Los Angeles and is a former Los Angeles County prosecutor, said, "I don't understand that word." And they went back and forth for a minute. And finally, Alan Jackson said, "Oh, furrows." The witness said, "I'm sorry, my accent." And Alan Jackson said, No, I'm on your turf. This is going to be a meme somewhere." And then the witness said, "My cousin Vinny." And that is how My Cousin Vinny came into this trial. But also the chat has been frequently talking about the scene in My Cousin Vinny where the defendant is like, "I shot the clerk," but it's a question, not a definitive statement. And right now, that's how I hit him is seeming in all of this. But we will see when we get into more witnesses. There are other law enforcement officers that were on scene that we are going to have to hear from. The other civilian witnesses that were on scene with Karen Read looking for John O'Keefe and finding him in the yard of Brian Albert, we have not heard from them yet. Interestingly enough, as they were talking about taking Karen Read to the hospital in the ambulance, they talked about the fact that she was being put on a psych hold that law enforcement determined, even though the paramedics seemed to disagree. They said once law enforcement issued that order, they had to take her to the hospital, even though they did not agree with it. But my question remains, from the time Karen Read left the scene to the time she came back, how did law enforcement determine that she needed to be placed on a psych hold? And who had that conversation? And that's not in evidence yet. The internet may know, but the jury does not. And I am trying to stay in this case as a juror and see what happens as it unfolds. And there have definitely been some shocking moments to me, including in the defense opening statement, the defense saying that the investigating officer in this case bragged to friends over text message about searching defendant Karen Read's phone to find her nudes. When this investigating officer is on the stand, it is going to be very, very interesting. And you don't want to miss a minute of it. So I will remind you one more time to download the Law & Order app, because I will be alerting you as key witnesses take the stand, when court is back from breaks, and when we get into the defense case, if and when the defendant takes the stand, which we are a long way off from if it happens. But we are going to learn a lot more about this case together. I hope to see you in the chat. I hope this summary helped. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a Law Nerd. I will see you back in court. And remember, the breakdowns are on the Quick Bits channel for you every day so you can keep up with this trial, even when life gets busy. Because who can put their life on hold for 8 weeks? I mean, these jurors have to, the lawyers have to, but I get it. And I will see you in the next one. For deep dives into the stories that I covered here, you can find them on my YouTube channel at The Emily D. Baker and The Emily Show podcast. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday. The podcast goes live on Wednesdays. And if you want to stay in the loop with everything I'm doing, receive the fastest notifications out there, and get more Law Nerd community, join me at lawnerdapp.com, our free app for iOS and Android.